the most unforgettable show in America, hosted by the most memorable man in the world, The Kevin Trudeau Show. Get him on the phone right now at 888-99-KEVIN.
I have a very special guest, Kristin Canty. She's the director and producer of a new documentary film called Farmageddon, The Unseen War on American Family Farms. And there is a website. We're going to put it up on our website at ktradionetwork.com. The website is farmageddonmovie.com. farmageddonmovie.com. Now, I've not seen the movie yet. I'm going to be getting it and watching it straight away. But I am so excited to see this movie. And let's go to Kristin Canty, the director-producer of Farmageddon, The Unseen War on American Family Farms. Kristin, thanks so much for being my guest.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very, very excited about this movie documentary. I have not seen it yet, so you have to tell me a little bit about it. And what are you revealing in this documentary?
Well, it all started when I'll start from the beginning. My son, when he was a preschooler, he was just completely ridden with allergies and asthma. The doctors told me that his immune system was severely depressed, and he was allergic to the world, is basically what they said, which meant grass, dust, every type of animal, every kind of pollen. And the medications weren't working, and they were just making him sicker. And he had a hearing impairment because of it, and obviously was just always stuffed up and miserable. And so I started doing research on why his immune system was depressed, and I found out that that kids that grow up on farms don't get as many allergies as kids that don't, and more research into that led me to find out that people had found that they'd been healed of allergies when consuming unpasteurized milk. So I decided to go to my farmer, find a farmer, and I interviewed him and met his kids to make sure they were healthy, and interviewed his customers, and finally decided to try the raw milk, and he was completely cured. He's 16 now and doesn't have any allergies at all. But so because of that experience, I belong to 3 co-ops where I try to get my food directly from farmers. So like I belong to a dairy co-op, a meat co-op, and a vegetable co-op. And all around the country, people are, forming co-ops and CSAs and private food buying clubs so that they can get their food directly from farmers. And a few years ago, I found out through the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund that many of these clubs, private buying clubs and farmers that were, selling directly to consumers were getting raided and shut down by the government. Sometimes, with armed agents pointing guns at children. So I became very upset about this, and I tried to get it. I tried to get mainstream coverage for it, and I had no luck in that. So finally, I decided to set out myself and interview the families that had been raided.
Now, you know a little bit about the Rawesome situation, correct?
Yes. They're friends of mine, and they're. I did one of their last raid was in my movie. Is in my movie.
Now, I want to digress just for a second, because this is obviously a unique situation that just happened recently where Rawesome, which sells raw dairy products, was raided with armed guards, and guys are thrown in jail right now. Place has been pretty much shut down. What do you know about the situation?
Yep, the Rawesome Club has been completely shut down. I know that the other morning at 9 a.m., armed agents went to both Healthy Family Farms and arrested Sharon Palmer for selling raw milk, and they, at the same time, they went to James Stewart's private residence. They took his computers, they took his money, they changed the locks on his doors of his private residence, and they arrested him, and they shut down Rawesome, took all of the club's food and dumped it down the sink. They dumped all of the dairy down the sink, and they took the vegetables. They completely wiped the place out. I know that on the warrant, it only said that they were supposed to take some dairy samples, I was told, but they took all of the food away on the truck. The other thing that is being. There's a bunch of videos on the internet showing the LAPD not being able to tell James what he was being arrested for. So he was sitting there for hours with no charges, with handcuffs on, while everything was taken, and he was never read his rights, and he was not told what he was being charged with. So
now this situation is not unique. Your documentary Farmageddon, does it document and show other similar instances where farms or co-ops are getting raided by the government?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's not unique. I mean, this should never happen. It shouldn't even happen once. But my movie portrays 7 of these extreme examples of armed agents going into farms and private homes. In one case, there was a woman in Ohio who found 40 Amish farms in her area that had no way to get their products to market. So she had this great idea. She started a co-op with her neighbors where one week she would go around and collect food from these farmers and bring it back to her house. And the next week a different neighbor would do it. It was, a shared cooperative. And it got bigger and bigger. And finally the Ohio Department of Agriculture caught wind of it. And they went into her house with 11 armed agents and kept, there was many kids in the house. She has 5 kids, and her daughter-in-law was living there at the time. She has 4 kids, and she was living there in her basement because her husband was in Iraq. And so these armed agents kept, 9 kids locked in a room with guns drawn for about 6 hours while they tore the house apart, took their own food for their personal use, took the food from their co-op, took all their computers, and confiscated their cell phones. So, unfortunately, there's been many examples of these, extreme overreactions, violent overreactions to people just trying to get food directly from their farmers.
What is the genesis of these lawsuits? Do you know what happened to these people? Okay, so that's the incident. They were arrested. They were raided. Obviously, they were charged with a crime. Do you know, have any of these examples that you gave in your movie, have they gone to court? Have they gone to trial? Have they settled? Do you know what has happened?
No. I mean, that's the thing is, in the case I just told you about in Ohio, what was on the warrant said that they were operating a retail establishment without a license. That's a third-degree misdemeanor. So to think that for a third-degree misdemeanor, these people were held hostage for 6 hours, it's ridiculous. And not only that, charges were never pressed.
All right, so hold on. Let's stop right there.
Okay.
So where we have a group of people that are basically selling food to their friends, relatives, and neighbors, armed agents with guns drawn raid the house, ransack the house, steal money, steal computers from these citizens, destroy all the food. Children have guns drawn in front of the children, keep the children hostage with guns drawn for 6 hours. They're only charged with a Class 3 misdemeanor, which is similar to a parking ticket, correct?
Correct.
It's a parking ticket. I don't know the last time that I parked near a fire hydrant where armed guards came out with their guns drawn, threw me to the ground, ransacked my car to give me a parking ticket. So even though it's a Class 3 misdemeanor, it seems like the government is trying to use intimidation to stop people from doing this in the future.
Exactly.
Now, let's go slow. So they're charged with a Class 3 misdemeanor. They're obviously been terrorized. Their children traumatized by our government. It's illegal. It's immoral. It's unethical. Maybe they were operating an establishment without a license, and maybe they needed a license. But it's a parking ticket. It's a Class 3 misdemeanor. They can correct that. They don't need to have their house ransacked and everything destroyed, and there's no reason for agents to come with guns drawn. But you're saying the charges were then dropped.
There was no charges ever filed.
No charges were even ever filed.
Exactly.
So here we have the government of the United States of America basically doing and acting what the Gestapo did and acting like the Gestapo did under Nazi Germany, using guns and intimidation, forgetting the rule of law, not even charging people with crimes, just terrorizing citizens who are doing something that the government doesn't like, which is eating healthy food.
Exactly. Yesterday, I believe, is the first time that anyone's actually been charged. So James Stewart and Sharon Palmer were both, and one other person, Victoria Block, they were charged with conspiracy to commit a crime, the crime being selling raw milk. So that was actually the first time that anyone's actually been charged.
All right, which is probably a good thing, because now maybe it'll go to trial, maybe it'll get some press. I mean, the good thing about this case is it actually got a little bit of exposure in some media outlets. Certainly, it hasn't made mainstream media at all, where it should. But it seems like this case, the Rawesome case, is getting a little bit more media exposure than some of the other cases.
Yes, I hope so. The last time Rawesome was raided, they did get on Colbert and they did get on John Stossel. So they tend to attract more attention in California than the other raids did, that were in Ohio or upstate New York or Pennsylvania.
Now, in your documentary where you talk about and document these raids, what government agencies are involved?
It's a mixture. It's in some cases it was just a state Department of Agriculture. In one other case it was the USDA, and in some cases it's the FDA. The raid that occurred yesterday was actually the FDA that had done they were told there had been a 1 year, they've been working on it for a year with a sting operation, and it's the FDA that was pressing charges. The FDA also did a year-long sting operation on a farmer that is not in my movie, Dan Alger, an Amish farmer. So for 1 year, they infiltrated his club and finally raided his farm in Pennsylvania. And currently, the Department of Justice is charging him with sale of raw milk over state lines.
The sale of raw, organic milk over state lines.
Yes. Currently, it's against the law to sell milk over state lines. People are, what they're doing, is again making private clubs, having private contracts with farmers. So, they're responsible for the standards of the milk. They're responsible for the standards of their food. They know their farmer, and so. They're not actually. So Dan wasn't actually selling milk over state lines. People were going there to get the milk and buying it there, and then they were bringing it over state lines.
Right.
Because it's not against the law to possess or consume raw milk, and it was never. It's not stated that it's against the law to cross state lines with your milk. It's against the law to sell it over state lines. So people thought that they were working within the law and had a private contract, and the government's been shutting these kinds of operations down also.
Well, when I was traveling with President Gorbachev in Australia several years ago, he said it doesn't matter what your Constitution says, and it doesn't matter what your laws say. All that matters is what the judge says, and all that matters is what the guys with the guns say. And that's really the problem here. Even though these people are doing what they believe to be is within the law and probably legally is within the law, it doesn't matter. Because the guys with the guns and the judges, they just have to say different. And there's almost nothing we can do about it. If the judges decide otherwise, they're going to put the handcuffs on, they got the guns, and you can be crying behind bars. It's really, really sad. What is the government's position as to the reason they think stopping this is important?
Well, most of this is all in the name of food safety. I couldn't get any of the individual departments that had actually conducted the raids to speak in my movie. Their blanket statement was that the investigation is ongoing, that the case is ongoing, so that they couldn't speak to these issues. However, the FDA, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all the government organizations that pretty much state that raw milk is not safe and shouldn't be consumed by anybody.
But it's not just about raw milk, right? Your movie Farmageddon, and again, the website is farmageddonmovie.com, farmageddonmovie.com, and we're talking with Kristin Canty, who's the director and producer of this documentary, farmageddonmovie.com. You can also find it at our website, ktradionetwork.com. If you're a member of our Insider Email Club, you're going to get a link to it as well. But in your movie, it's not just about raw milk, or is it? Or is it about fruits and vegetables and meat as well?
No, it's not about the milk. All about the milk. I set out to make it about every issue that was, stopping the small farmer from getting his product to market. But it did end up focusing a lot on the milk because that's what most of the raids are about. But there's a raid in the movie conducted by the USDA against a sheep farm. A woman brought these healthy sheep over from New Zealand and the UK, and the USDA accused her sheep of having mad cow disease, which is a disease that sheep don't get. And all the tests came back negative for mad cow disease. And but in the end, the USDA went in with guns, with 40 armed agents at 5 a.m. in the middle of a blizzard, and took her sheep and incinerated them, and made them take their barn apart. They made them get rid of all of their hay, all of their cheese baking equipment, saying that these sheep had a disease that doesn't exist to this day. So that's another case, and there's been many cases of that happening with sheep farms. And in the Stowers case, the Ohio case that I was telling you about, that was about the meat. That was people that really wanted to get their meat from Amish farms that had no antibiotics and no steroids in it, from grass-fed animals, and so they were just trying to make a one-on-one contract agreement with these farmers that they knew that all lived near them, and they were just rejecting the supermarket meat, and they got shut down for that.
And again, the rationale that the government gives is they're trying to protect the citizenry of America from tainted, unhealthy, dangerous food. That's their argument, correct?
That's their argument, yeah. And now, of course, our argument is they don't seem to be doing a good job at that.
Anyway, exactly. Yeah, Cargill just took 36 million pounds of ground turkey off the market for salmonella.
Exactly. And so, the problem with the meat right now is that there's just not enough USDA inspected slaughterhouses, and the ones that there are, there's just thousands and thousands of animals going through there. And so people don't really want meat that has gone through those houses. They, if you have a farmer that lives near you, they consider it safer if the farmer could, it would be nice if the farmers were allowed to slaughter on their property. If we had more USDA inspectors that could go onto the farmer's property, if they had mobile slaughterhouses, and more USDA inspected slaughterhouses, if that's, if America was serious about food safety, that's the one area where they could really improve.
Right, but the government's trying to shut down these independent farms, these people from saying, look, I don't want to buy my fruits and vegetables or dairy or meat at the supermarket. I want to buy it from my local farmers where I know the farmer, I can see the animals, I know what it is. It's like it was done for centuries. That's where I want to get my produce. I want to get it locally grown, very fresh, not irradiated, organic, not genetically modified, in season. That's where I want to get my vegetables, my fruits, my herbs, my meat, my dairy, my cheese. Okay, so that's what people want. The government says you can't buy it from your local people because it's potentially dangerous. You have to buy it from the grocery store. And so they're doing these raids to intimidate people, to intimidate the farmers and stop it. So the sound good excuse is we're trying to protect people from potentially dangerous meat. But the fact is the locally produced things is not dangerous. The stuff in the supermarket is, in fact, dangerous. That's the fact. But the real reason, Kristin, based on your interviews, isn't it The real reason the government wants to stop this is to force people to buy their food from the grocery store, to keep the multinational, large food incorporated companies the sole source of production, and make it so that we're forced to get the antibiotics, the growth hormones, the genetically modified food, and there are no options. What do you think?
Yes, I have to agree with that right now because, especially because the people in the FDA right now and the current administration have no interest in making the GMOs labeled, in truth and labeling in our food, and if it was up to them, they would have hidden the fact that there are steroids and antibiotics in our food. So, the fact that they're condoning junk food, subsidizing junk food, and fighting against against food labeling, just goes to show that their so-called food safety isn't really in our best interest.
Your movie, Farmageddon, it's the unseen war against the family farm, Farmageddonmovie.com. How are you getting the documentary and the movie out? People right now can request screenings, and so it is being screened around the country right now. I'm doing a theatrical release temporarily, just because I'm really trying to get this issue into the mainstream press. I just firmly believe that if more Americans knew that this was happening, even if, I've met so many people that have seen the movie that have come up to me, and they don't care how they eat, they don't care what they put into their bodies, they don't have any desire to drink raw milk, and have still said that they're outraged that the government is spending their money spying on sheep farmers and raiding Amish farmers. That's really what it's about. It's not about trying to convince somebody that you should be eating raw dairy or eating meat. It's about should a person have the freedom to do so, and is it ridiculous and insane that the U.S. government is taking these Gestapo-like tactics, time, money, energy, but also drawing the guns and doing these raids? Isn't that, and you just pointed out, that's what's making people outraged at our government actions. Not about whether they want to eat raw. We should have freedom. We should have choices. The government is 100% wrong in the way they're attacking these individual people. Exactly.
Yeah, millions of dollars are being spent on sting operations on Amish farmers. When our economy is having quite a difficult time right now. But so theatrically, I'm trying to play in as many places as possible for a week. So I'm playing in Chicago, August 26th to the 31st, and San Francisco from September 23rd to the 30th. And if you check my website, Farmageddonmovie.com, it's you can either request a screening or it might already be screening in your area. And when I'm through with the theatrical release, then it will be available on DVD, which will probably be late fall, early winter, and possibly sooner than that.
Fantastic. Well, Kristin, you're doing a fantastic job. That's why I have not seen it yet, because it's not on DVD. So I'm going to have to I'm leaving next week for Paris, so I'm going to miss the screening here in Chicago. Otherwise, I'd absolutely be there. I think it's at the Gene Siskel Theater, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, you can get all the release dates, folks, at Farmageddonmovie.com. 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 Kristin Canty, the director and producer, thank you so much for being my guest. Keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you so much.
You have a super day.
You too.
The show Madison Avenue, Wall Street, and Pennsylvania Avenue hope you'll never hear. Tell those bozos to hit the road. You're on the path to freedom. The Kevin Trudeau Show. Heard weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern and on demand anytime at KTRadioNetwork.com. Join the free Insider Email Club and get the scoop no one else can get. www.KTRadioNetwork.com.